you an Amazon Prime subscriber? Are you looking for interesting TV to watch? Maybe you're looking for something which calls back to other entertaining things you've seen in the past. Well, if that's the case, go and watch The Grand Tour. Their finale does all of that and more. Certainly a lot more than this crap is going to offer you. Rings of Power, Episode 5. Or maybe it should be, rather than the Rings of Power, the Rings of Implausible Plot. Because that seems to be all they're able to come up with right now. They're continuing with this theme that the rings are whispering to their wearers. The rings are like the One Ring. Remember how that called out to Frodo? The stupid thing is that the way that it was done in the Lord of the Rings films, it was a way of Jackson trying to show the pull that the ring had on the wearer, particularly as Frodo got closer and closer to Mordor. However, as far as I can recall, there was no real whispering from the ring, but they seem to have taken that in their writing of the Rings of Power to be canon of this is what they did. They're not going back to source material. They're going back to what Jackson did as a way of trying to portray the writing that Tolkien did and then say, let's do it, but 10 times more. And as a result, it just becomes worthless and useless, to be honest. Anyway, we have a problem for the dwarves. Durin doesn't trust Durin. And by that I mean Prince Durin does not trust King Durin. And he's a bit wary of the ring on his finger. However, the ring appears to solve all the problems that they have in Khazad-dûm, because the ring helps the dwarves find the light shafts. And as you can imagine, for someone whose entire life was dedicated to being the person that brought life to the dwarves, Disa is not happy. To be honest, I was quite amused. But unfortunately, we don't get lots of people laughing in Disa's face, as there will be when they're watching the episode. Instead, we have Disa being all uppity about it. And then quickly we jump over to Eregion, where there's more stuff to do with the dwarves, because we see the revealing of the Gate of Moria, the Gates of Durin. Remember those? Yes. The very thing that Gandalf reveals just as they're trying to get into Moria. The gate that is only revealed by moonlight. And they show this, and that's about all we see for this episode. Anatar wants rings for men. Celebrimbor is not happy. He doesn't trust men, and he says no. Now, forgive me for pausing at this point, but as far as Celebrimbor is concerned, Anatar is a messenger from the Valar. Anatar has come to help fix the problems in Middle-earth. Indeed, as far as Celebrimbor is concerned, if Sauron is still around, Anatar is here to fight Sauron. Of course, this is only in terms of Rings of Power lore, not in terms of reality within Tolkien lore, but anyway. Celebrimbor, in this writing, has basically said no to the Valar by saying no to Anatar. If Anatar has come as a messenger from the Valar saying, I want rings for men in order to help save them, there should never be any doubt in Celebrimbor's mind that he has to say yes and go along with it. Because clearly, it's a message from the Valar. It's the will of the Valar. And Celebrimbor holds the Valar in high esteem. Admittedly, his predecessors in his family had a bit of a problem with them. But that's not how he's being portrayed so far. So it makes absolutely no sense to say no. And then just to finish it all off, Annatar says he'll do it himself. We have, it would seem, conflict within the realms of Eregion between the character who is portraying himself to be a messenger from the Valar and the person who heads up Eregion. And yeah, it's just stupid. And we return to Númenor. And it would seem that all it takes is someone to claim that an eagle is doing something that could be interpreted in many ways, to start chanting in favour of the person that they prefer, and all of a sudden they become the ruling monarch of Númenor. Because Pharazôn, after people saying Pharazôn, Pharazôn, like complete morons, have decided that's the only way that it could be done, and there we have it, King Pharazôn. There's no mention of the R, the AR at the front of his name, which would be the denoting that he is the king. That would be his royal title. All we know at the moment is that Pharazôn is now king. Interesting to note, last episode, not too long ago, he was simply sitting in a bar, well, a tavern, having a chat with his supporters. Now he is king of all Númenor. Somebody needs to sort their writing out even more than they already did. Anyway, those of you that are aware of what happens to Pharazôn eventually, they will know that eventually Sauron convinces Pharazôn to go and attack Aman, the land of the Valar. Well, he's not long been king, and he's already saying maybe we should go and attack the Valar. This is with no prompting from Sauron, no tempting, no goading or anything like that. He simply decided, oh, well, yes, it's our right as well. We should be able to have that which the elves have. There is no reason for it whatsoever. Anyway, we switch over to Míriel, and she and Elendil are talking, and Elendil says that remember, the arrogant queen who was against the elves, was against Galadriel at first, she apparently returned Elendil to being faithful, despite the fact that Elendil was the one who was pro-Galadriel for the vast majority of her time on Númenor. Lady Boss has got a lady boss, I guess, and that means that she can twist the thoughts and feelings of the men around her just as much as telling them what to do, I guess. Anyway, then we get the most annoying character they have created. Now, I know that there are many in the running for this title, but I think it's fairly clear that the daughter of Elendil, who doesn't actually exist, is by far the most irritating character that the writers of Rings of Power have created. And all the more so for the fact that this daughter who doesn't exist is now a lady boss for Pharazôn. She has usurped Elendil, her father, with the help of Pharazôn's son, and she is kicking out the people she doesn't like from the Sea Guard, or whatever they're called, the people who do the boats for Númenor. she's trying to get rid of them. Indeed, she is getting rid of them because she's gone there with Pharazôn's son. One of the things that we note is that she does have an attempt to try and convince Valandil, that guy who doesn't exist, another created character, the friend of Isildur. She does try and convince him to stay, that she might be able to put in a good word for him. But he refuses. This may come back to us again in the next episode because of something that happens later on. But anyway, the last thing we see on Numenor is Pharazôn wondering whether he could use the Palantir. You know, that thing that also helped to convince people that Miriel was not the queen that they wanted because of it being elvish magic. Yes, he's now considering using the Palantir. Another thing to note. When we read about the Palantir in the books, the king does not own the Palantir. It is the faithful who own the Palantir. They are a gift to the faithful from the elves on Tol Eressëa. That's why all of the Palantir are able to go with Elendil and his sons when they travel to Middle-earth to try and avoid getting caught by the destruction of Numenor. Pharazôn never touches them. It's like they're trying to make... Well, I suppose they are just making things that never existed happen in order to try and... But they're doing it in order to try and create some kind of tension where it's not needed. It'd be a bit like saying, I know, let's take Star Wars, the series of films that people love where there's fights in space between starships, you've got lightsaber battles, you've got fights with blasters, and let's bring in something that has absolutely nothing to do with it and make them think all about that. And that's what people who are fans of Star Wars want to see. Let's have them all having, I don't know, tap dancing lessons, because that's what we want them to see. When actually all people want is blaster fights, space fights, lightsaber fights. It's just... words fail. Well, they said when they were prepping us for Series 2 that things would be hopping around all over the place as storylines started going. Well, I don't know about storyline and action getting a big boost, but they're certainly hopping all over the place. We're now back with the elves. Celebrimbor has lied in a letter to Gil-galad, and Gil-galad is now considering taking action, it would seem, against Adar in the south. There are questions as to whether he's going to be sending troops down south. Meanwhile, we're seeing the one bit of action that we seem to be focusing on at the moment. It's Elrond and his crew running back to Lindon. And to show just how much business he means, Elrond has torn off his cloak as he runs. And now we're back with the dwarves, and Disa is getting uppity about King Durin and his ring. She says it's too much for him. Apparently, she knows best about this ring, having never worn it, having no idea what it does. All she can see at the moment is that she's without a job because King Durin can see where the light shafts are. Anyway, we then hear about King Durin starting to get greedy for gold. Now, I've read a bit about the dwarven gold greed, and I know that when it came to the rings, yes, it did create that. But not in the space of a few days. The whole point was that the ring was something that dwelled upon them. So similar to how, let's say, the rings of men, the rings of power that went to men, they wore them and they got on with their lives. And as they started to get older, they didn't age. And eventually, it sapped all of the life away from them, to which they became wraiths. It's the same with the One Ring. We have a look at Gollum as an example, that he got the ring. And even if we go with the almost speeded up version that Peter Jackson showed us in the films, it was a slow process whereby Gollum's humanity or hobbit-manity, whatever it is that we call it, was slowly ebbed away as he wore and used the ring. In the same way with the dwarves. Yes, they're always keen on gold and trinkets and that kind of thing. But this gold greed happened over a long period of time, that eventually it got through to them where they were thinking that. But no, it's happened in a few days, and King Durin is completely loopy on it. We then go to Disa shopping for her kid's birthday, and she buys a trinket after complaining about the price and us finding out about the gold tax that King Durin has put on, which obviously fits in with the whole he's anxious to get more gold. Anyway, Disa drops the trinket and she chases after it. She finds herself in a place she's never been before, which just so happens to be the place where the big pool is that Gandalf and the Balrog fell into. And she decides that she's going to sing. I'm not sure whether she was trying to work out what it was or whether she was trying to find the thing that she had dropped. Turns out that she was able to find the thing she dropped by singing. But we then find that the Balrog reacts. Even though we don't actually see him, that there are enough hints there that the Balrog is stirring. Stirring, well, even if we're fair to the Rings of Power and say all of this is happening at the end of the Second Age, it's still 2,000 years early. Anyway, King Durin initiates the 7 rings to 7 dwarf lords. We've yet to see these 7 dwarf lords, but there are emissaries that come from the 7 lords, and he says that he is willing to offer the 6 other rings to the 6 other dwarf lords, and that in order for them to get it, they will have to give a tax, effectively, of gold to him. Because, of course, King Durin now is in charge of all these rings. Rather than being a gift from Celebrimbor to the Dwarf Lords, they are now 7 rings as a gift to King Durin, who's then going to give them to the other Dwarf Lords. And we see more gold lust and ring anxiety from King Durin. Meanwhile, Prince Durin turns up and declares that what Disa saw, which we weren't shown her seeing anything, is a nameless evil. Sounds a bit similar to what Gandalf describes the Balrog. And yet, if Disa had seen the Balrog, my guess is she wouldn't have been able to tell the tale. Oh, if only that had happened. More girl boss action now, as it would appear that Celebrimbor's female assistant has made a ring that turns her invisible. And because she was in the Wraith world, because of going invisible, she saw Sauron beneath the mask, but doesn't know it is Anatar. So it would seem that everyone who has a ring that turns them invisible, it makes them go into the Wraith realm. And it seems that from what they're talking about, the more mithril that you add into the ring casting, that's what adds the invisibility. Now, it's worth noting that the whole point with elves and the rings is they don't get turned invisible. And the reason that they don't is not because more mithril is put into it. It's to do with the sort of creature that they are. They're more resistant to it. Lesser men are less resistant to the power of the ring. That's why, amongst other things, they turn invisible. Anyway, Prince Durin turns up and shares his fears about the ring effect with Celebrimbor, and Durin raises questions about Anatar as though he knows something. As far as I'm aware, Durin turned up when the offer was made of the rings, and then was also there when the rings were crafted. Anatar and Durin have only met twice, as far as we know. And yet, from meeting him twice, he's declaring that he thinks that there's something wrong. Anyway, Anatar suggests to Celebrimbor's assistant that Celebrimbor is the scary thing that she saw. Not Sauron, but Celebrimbor. Saying that he's turned to darkness with what's going on. And then, to top it off, he flirts with her and declares that she looks like Galadriel. How much more shipping do we need? Back on Numenor, we're now at a Shrine of the Faithful. And just as they're about to do their religious thing, Pharazôn's son interrupts and declares that the whole thing's got to be torn down. And after being really annoying and obnoxious, eventually Elendil hits him, and this starts a bit of a fight. And we nearly have that annoying son of Pharazôn killed by the other created character, Valandil. Indeed, after nearly being drowned by Pharazôn's son, he eventually fights back, breaks Pharazôn's son's arm, and is about to stab him with his own sword when he's told not to. And after shaking lots, and Elendil pleading with him not to do it, he drops the sword. And surprise, surprise, Pharazôn's son picks the sword up and stabs him in the back. I didn't see that coming, did you? So yes, not only is Elendil completely incompetent, not only is he completely pathetic, not only is he the biggest whipping boy that the entirety of Numenor has ever seen, on top of all of that, he's now gotten someone killed by telling him to drop the sword and not kill their enemy. Yes, Elendil is pathetic. Anyway, at the end of all of that, Elendil is arrested. I just don't see what they're doing. Not because I'm being hidden by good writing. It just makes no sense. And I'm sure when the big reveal as to how they're doing this is all finally in the open, it still won't make a lick of sense. Back in Eregion, Celebrimbor, who, when being asked by Prince Durin, said that there was nothing wrong with the Dwarven Rings, now goes to Annatar and declares that there is a problem with the Dwarven Rings, and he blames Annatar. Well, I mean, yes, that is correct based on how they portrayed it, but Annatar denies it. And instead, he blames Celebrimbor's lying to Gil-galad. So, the issue is the fact that he told some porkies to Gil-galad in that letter as a way of trying to do this, rather than going ahead with the way that things should have been, which is saying, I've got a messenger from the Valar, we're here to make rings of power for all of the races. Instead of doing all of that, he lied, and that's what's causing the problem with the Dwarven Rings. I mean, as plots go, that's possibly the least implausible thing they've said so far this episode. I mean, it's still bloody stupid, but, you know. Durin is now pleading with Durin, that's Prince Durin, pleading with King Durin to stop using the ring. King Durin, rather than responding angrily to the fact that his son is telling him not to use the thing that he's really obsessed about, remember, obsessed about in their storyline, not in the reality of Tolkien lore, he then decides he's going to reinstate his son as the official kind of prince character that we originally saw, complete with that big neck bracey thing. And then Prince Durin returns home and Disa is not happy, and she tells Durin to swear that he will never wear the ring. Because reasons. She's a girl boss and therefore knows everything, and clearly he can't wear the ring because otherwise it'll bring everything falling down. We're nearly there, I promise. Anyway, Celebrimbor decides that the only reason for the Dwarven Rings not working is because of his smiths. Now, I'm sure you've all heard the phrase, a worker blaming his tools. It's a bad worker blames his tools. Well, strictly speaking, the smiths are Celebrimbor's tools because they are being used to create the rings. I mean, yes, they are people, but they are his tools, his things to apply where he sees fit. So Celebrimbor's now a bad worker, a bad smith. Anyway, he decides to go ahead and create the 9 rings for men. There's not really been a good argument in favour of it. He's just decided that he's going to do it. And while he's telling them about all of this, turns out that he's got a diverse bunch of smiths as well. Smiths who were all Noldor. They were all of the same race of elves. But apparently that just means that they're going to have all sorts of colours of hair and skin colour and all sorts of things like that. Because that's the way that fake Middle-earth runs now. And then after Celebrimbor has declared they're going to do the 9 rings, we then have Annatar convincing the smiths to get on with the work. He's the one who gives them the oomph to get on with it. Because Celebrimbor is completely pathetic now and is at the whim of the evil Annatar / Sauron. Again, not how it worked, but what do we expect from these people? Last bit, I promise. We're back with the orcs, and the orcs are now in sight of Eregion. And we just bounce back from them briefly to find out that Gil-galad won't send the army. We don't know why. It could be because he's already sent them down south and therefore doesn't have an army to send. But for whatever reason, he's not sending the army to defend Eregion. And so back with the orcs release Galadriel from her cage. And one of the orcs is about to kill her when Adar stops what's going on. And he then tries to tempt Galadriel to join him. And it's all based on the idea of they both hate Sauron, so why not join forces to defeat him together? There is a reason why the elves and the orcs have been enemies for as long as they have. They do not partner together. The only time that we've known about an elf joining with orcs, and even then it wasn't so much orcs as Morgoth, was Maeglin. Maeglin was the one of all the elves who betrayed them to Morgoth because he'd been captured and it was his way of trying to escape death. Why on earth would Galadriel seek to partner with a bunch of orcs and their fallen elf master? The Rings of Implausible Plot. Well, let's say it didn't really disappoint with that title, did it?